Hi everyone, good morning and good afternoon. My name is Amy Barak. I work on the marketing team at BitDam. We want to thank you for joining our webinar, The Blind Spots of Email Security That Nobody Speaks About. Today our speaker, Liron Barak, BitDam CEO and co-founder, who has strong experience in cybersecurity. Before starting BitDam, Liron served as an officer in the elite unit of the Israeli Intelligence Corps, focusing on the offensive side of cyber. In this session, she is going to share some very surprising findings of BitDam's recent study covering the level of efficacy in the email security solutions. If there are any questions during the webinar, please type them into the online chat. We will address them during the presentation or after the presentation has completed. We strongly encourage you to download the content that is attached to this webinar and try our free email security assessment tools that will provide you with insights regarding your current email security. With that, I will now hand it over to you, Liron.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining today to shed some light about the blind spots of email security. What do I actually mean by the blind spots of email security? I mean that email security vendors are in this space for decades, and organizations spend billions of dollars every year to protect their email. But in 2019, still 92% of the attacks on organizations started with a malicious email that was sent to one of the employees. Quite surprising, considering the overall increasing investment from both the enterprises and the vendor side. Well, personally, as Amy just said, for about 7 years, I was a cyber attacker in the Israeli intelligence forces. And I can share that from my experience, the main reason that this gap continues to be so significant is due to the use of automation. Attackers are massively using automation during the last couple of years, and this leads to a situation when the attack landscape becomes super dynamic, while the threats themselves are changing all the time. New variants of known threats, such as Emotet and Dridex, are generated on a daily basis, and most of those new attack mutations are being missed by the security solutions. And the main challenge here is the security solutions have to chase after new variants of known attacks, but the attackers are using automation tools and easily transforming known threats into unknown threats. And by the time the solutions will be ready to detect a specific variant, there will be new hundreds of variants of the same threat, because this is how they play the game. As an example, as you can see here, we can look at Emotet, a ransomware that is responsible for shutting down many cities and municipalities in the US. It is usually delivered via a simple Office document containing a macro. You can see here as an example of 2 Emotet macro attacks that were sent in the same time span of a few hours as part of the same campaign. What is really interesting is that the human eye can tell that those macros are similar, but for a machine, they look very different. Because this is how automation works. It does the same bad things, but look different for a machine so that it cannot classify it as something they've previously seen, and it looks completely new. If you think that this automation is a hard job to do, it is not for the attacker, as they can create hundreds of variants in just a few hours. That actually shows how advanced attackers are in their automation tools. And I think that the question that we should all ask ourselves is, are email security solutions up for this challenge? Are they able to detect new attack mutations that are being released every day? And it will be interesting at this phase to get a better understanding of your experience with your email security stack. Are they up for this challenge? Did your organization face an email cyber attack during the past year? You are welcome to answer the poll, and I will share the results, of course, later on in this session. Talking about the unknown threat challenge. Well, during the last 5 months, we have performed a robust empirical study in order to check if the current email security solutions are up for this challenge, and what is the exact exposure to threats when there is an email security solution in place. During the experiment, we collected tens of thousands of malicious files from live customer data and from feeds like VARS Total, for example. We qualified those samples and made minor changes in them, just that the hash will look different. Overall, we are talking about hundreds of threats per day. And it's important to mention, we're just the mediator here. We don't change nor edit the threats, just automatically send it to the test live environment once we detect a new threat in the wild. That's it. For every threat that we have detected, we send it to a dedicated email account that are protected by the leading ATP solutions for email. We're talking about solutions like Office 365 ATP, Proofpoint, G Suite for Enterprise, and so on. And I would just mention that the configuration of the security was as recommended by the vendor itself. Well, after we send the files, we measured the miss rate by checking which emails actually hit the inbox. For those that was missed, we kept resending them every hour until they were blocked. And this we actually did in order to measure the time to detect, what we call the TTD, which means how fast the vendor can cover its misses. I would just say that those attacks are not necessarily a 0-day. Practically, usually they are not a 0-day. So it doesn't require any new patch or anything in order to deal with them. Those are mainly attacks that are created every day and holds malware, ransomware, and other threats. So as you can see, this is a rather simple test where we act as a mediator and collecting threats out in the wild and sending them to protected accounts. Pretty straightforward. And now we will move to the results, of course. This is the slide results for Office 365 ATP. On the left side, you can see the miss rate of each week from mid-October until the beginning of March. As I mentioned, this is an ongoing study. So we have data up until today, which basically shows the same trend. On the right, you can see the time to detect that I mentioned before of those specific attacks. Roughly speaking, it is divided into two. About half of the attacks are detected in more than a day and a half. And half are relatively fast, which we are talking about less than 6 hours. I'm saying relatively because 6 hours is a lot. To breach a network, you only need a few minutes. While the results for G Suite for Enterprise that you can see now on the screen, we can see that during the same period of time, the miss rate is higher than Office 365 ATP, while the time to detect is actually better and stands on 31 hours. Practically, we're talking about the same exact same issue and the exact same phenomena, even if the numbers are a bit different from Office 365 ATP to G Suite for Enterprise. And we recently also added the Proofpoint to our study, of course, which, if we're talking market-wise, is the popular solution for large enterprises. As you can see, the miss rate is not far from Office 365 ATP, but the time to detect is about 5 times better. We also looked at it at a different aspect, and we measured what Office 365 ATP can detect that Proofpoint missed. As you can see, about a third of what Proofpoint misses, Office ATP can detect. You can see it like this is the blue bars. Actually, I would even say that even if your security stack includes more than one of the advanced solutions, you are still exposed. And we're talking about a significant exposure. For example, if you use, in this case, Proofpoint and Office ATP combined, you will be exposed to 15% of the threats. As you can see here in this snapshot, the exposure is constant and significant. Every single moment, there are real threats that can potentially bypass any solution that you have in place, no matter if you use Office 365 or Proofpoint or G Suite protection in their most advanced and expensive offerings. By the way, per my question in the beginning of the session, about 50% of you replied that your organization experienced an email cyber attack during the past year. Of course, the numbers are very significant, as we can expect. Well, the bottom line is that the email security solutions are not up for this challenge. While they may detect the knowns, they struggle to detect the unknowns. And these unknowns arrive every day. Practically, as the use of automation is super effective for the attackers in terms of ROI, most of the threats today will be unknowns, as it requires no effort to generate new variants of the same old threats that we already saw millions of times before. And this is without even talking about the huge gap when it comes to time to detect, that actually leaves a bigger window of opportunities for the attackers. In our study, we really wanted to understand why. Like, what is the reason for this phenomena, for this gap? Why does all the email security solutions are failing to detect unknown threats at first encounter? So we managed to kind of reverse engineer the process that all solutions go through when a new attack emerges. So let's start from the beginning. A new attack variant was spotted in the wild. From this moment, it will take about 15 minutes at best until the reputation engines and threat hunting services start to kick in and flag this instance as suspicious. And here we're talking about gap 1 that you can see from the left. At this phase, you're not protected, as you can still click on these traps. In the meantime, the solutions are going through a process of qualifying the suspicious instance as malicious. And this is, of course, gap 2. This process might take a couple of days, and it's not always automatic. And lastly, a new detection mechanism should be added, and this might take days or even a few months. And of course, I'm talking about the third gap. And what is really important to mention here, this long process that I just described is happening for every single instance. And it can somehow explain the blind spots of email security when it comes to unknown threats. These blind spots are caused by the fact that security solutions are data-driven. What do I mean by that? Their detection mechanism is based on their past knowledge about the threats and about their prior familiarity with their behavior. Actually, a good example for that is a trend that we noticed during our study. Office 365 ATP in Europe has different detection rates comparing to Office 365 ATP in the US. And this is basically happening as a result of data propagation. It means that a malicious file that was detected in the US environment was not detected in the European environment for a few hours. By the way, we also noticed the same phenomena while watching the Proofpoint solution. In this case, there were different detection rates per different data centers. I would even say that this data propagation is not perfect at all, as we realize that in some cases, one data center will not be able to detect an attack that was detected in another data center, not only for a few hours, but for good. So practically, the solutions collect a lot of data about the threats and try to pay attention to patterns and trends that repeat themselves. But the issue is that the attacker is using a short automation script and will make that will make the attack act differently and not follow the known patterns. The good news is that BitDam is up for the unknown threat challenge and practically close this gap. And we are able to do that from a very simple reason. We are not data-driven. While all the email security solutions out there are detecting and preventing threats based on their prior familiarity with a specific threat, we are not collecting any data about the threat. That's why we are able to automatically protect against new variants of known threats when we first encounter those. So how we do that? How do we detect these threats? Well, instead of focusing on the malicious behavior and our familiarity with the threat itself, we focus on the legitimate behavior of the applications. Which application? Well, the applications that we all use in order to open files and links that might be malicious, such as Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Adobe Reader, Safari, and so on. We developed an engine that is able to automatically learn each application and map all the possible ways that this application should run. In other words, we are able to extract the different execution paths per application and learn the way that it should act while opening a legitimate file or link. We are building a knowledge base per application that contains its legitimate behavior, while any deviation from that is practically an alien code that is running on the machine, which is by definition, as you know, a malicious code. So here is a very simplistic example of how this process looks like. From BitDam engine has created the Microsoft Word knowledge base that you can see in the middle. And for each file, the service is able to check if the Microsoft Word is acting as intended. So from the left, here you can see a legitimate doc file. And once it's open in the Microsoft Word application, we got the green flow, the blue flow, and the orange flow. And actually, the BitDam that are part of the BitDam knowledge base about Microsoft Word, this means that those different execution passes are actually legitimate, and this is why we mark this file as legitimate, as valid. From the other end, on the right side, you can see the malicious Word file. Well, this file, as you can see, generates the pink execution flow, which is an alien code that is not part of the knowledge base about Microsoft Word that BitDam has generated. And this is why we mark this file as malicious, and we blocked it from reaching the end-user environment. And we are doing that not only for email. We protect against content-borne threats that are hidden in files and links across all the collaboration channels. As you already know, we protect Office 365 and G Suite, but we also protect Dropbox, Box, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, and other channels. The solution itself provided as a service deployed on Azure, Microsoft Cloud, while we have integrations with each collaboration channel through the API of these channels. It actually means that it takes less than 2 minutes to add or remove an integration to one of the platforms, and it dismisses any risk in terms of service failure. Just to emphasize the importance of detecting attacks at first encounter, here is an example from a live customer environment. This is, by the way, an American corporate with more than 30,000 employees. They use Proofpoint Tap and deployed BitDam on top of it. The last line of defense, it actually means that we get all the traffic of the organization after it was filtered by the Proofpoint Tap solution. We can see that during this month's period of time, BitDam has detected 50 different attacks that Proofpoint missed. And again, it's important to mention, this is on live traffic that was actually addressed to accounts in this organization. What was interesting to see is that the attackers were using the same attacks with small tweaks, like changing hashes, for example, and did it for up to 5 hours. If you take, for example, the second attack from the top, the Loda campaign, the 4 malicious detections, it was 4 attacks from the same campaign on a span of 5 hours. So the attackers also know that this is a gap and they are taking advantage of it. Why not? So to summarize, there is a significant detection gap when it comes to leading email security solutions today. While they miss more than 30% of the threats, and it takes them a few days to detect threats that were spotted in the wild. The good news that it is possible to close this gap using a no data-driven solution, such as BitDam, for example, and protect all the different collaboration channels, including the email vector. The deployment of our service is fast and simple, and you can try it for free via our website or through the Microsoft Marketplace. I invite you to get to our website and download the full study. It is also available as an attachment, as you can see, to the webinar itself as part of the attachments and links section. And you don't have to wonder how secure your email is. You can just check it within 2 minutes and get the real results. Just install the Lucky Meter application that is available in the Office 365 Marketplace, and you can see the barcode on the bottom, on the top of the slide. And you will get an access to a full dashboard with samples, conclusions, and statistics. And now it's the time to ask questions, so feel free to write me your question in the chat box. Okay, I can see here that we got the first question, so I will just read it. Can your solution work with Slack and with online meeting conferences, a conference platform like Teams? Practically, as I said, we are supporting all the different collaboration channels. We are developing and adding more channels as per our customer demand. So currently, we do support Teams, which is the main channel for Office 365 customer. Soon we are going to support Slack as well, as we believe, even now, I would say that with all the situation in the world with the COVID-19, we can see that more teams are working from home, and the use of Teams and also Slack become even more significant for enterprises, and this is one of the reasons that we're supporting this these days. Okay, I can see here another question. So you talked about automation. How come that you can detect these automated attacks while others can't? So, well, this is a great question. This is actually the essence of, you know, the uniqueness and the advantage of BitDam and its technology. So practically, as I said, as all the other solutions are data-driven, and they're actually based on the knowledge that they have about the threats. They're trying to pay attention to, you know, patterns, trends, behaviors of the attack itself that repeat themselves. And this is also the reason that they're super sensitive. If they will see a attack that looks different, they will not be able to recognize it as a threat, and they will, you know, not block it and pass it to the user. Unlike BitDam, and this is again our advantage, that we're not data-driven at all, because we don't base our solution on the knowledge about the threats, but on the knowledge about the applications. We learn the applications, the way it should act, you know, when opening a legitimate document or a legitimate link, and we make sure that the application is acting as intended. If we see there, you know, an alien code or you know, actually a behavior that we didn't see before, that we're not familiar with regarding the application and not regarding the threat, so practically we will block this link, and we don't need to, you know, to be familiar with this threat. And this is again our advantage. This is the reason that we're not sensitive to unknown threats that are generated on a daily basis using automation. So if there are no more questions, I would like to thank you for being with us today. And I recommend to have a look at the attachments that you can see here in the webinar, that there are some useful things here. And of course, feel free to reach out to us and to me personally for any question that you might have. You have my email here, and I will be happy to hear from you. Thank you very much for joining us today. It was a pleasure, and stay healthy.